Hello YouTube, just a quick update of where we're at with the 848 build. Doesn't look like much has been done, but actually a bit has been done, which I'll review for you today. I can't recall if I had the belts off and that sort of thing on the last video, but they're not off. The belt covers are off, waiting for new ones to come in from California Cycle Works. I think I did talk about how the original Gates Carbon Drive app was the best app to use for belt tensioning. I think I found another one that'll work. But anyway, if you listen carefully, I tested it with the app that I had, or the ones that I think will work, and yeah, those are pretty tight. I think it's 140 hertz or something like that. So over tight, which isn't uncommon, I guess, if the belts are old or they were poorly tensioned in the first place, but it doesn't matter. They're coming off and new ones are coming on. So you'll notice here that there's a whole bunch of hoses here dangling. So originally the 848 had the radiator coolant reservoir housed right in here, which I guess is a good way to save some space, but not a great spot if it happens to spring a leak or you want to actually drain the thing. So what most track day or race bikes do is they get rid of that and they have an accessory one that sits right here. And sure enough, Motion Pro actually makes one that will fit nicely right here. I think even they're not that expensive, and they shouldn't be for a piece of molded plastic, but a few of the track bikes and race bikes I've seen, that's what they've done. In order to take that out though, you have to take the Airbox off, which was a bit of a production, but I watched a couple of YouTube videos, hey, what do you know, and was able to take it off, and while I had it off, again, more cleaning, because there's 14 years of accumulated dust on this thing, and it's just one of those things where, you know, when you take a look at motorcycle racing at the top level, like MotoGP or Moto3, there's always a mechanic cleaning things, and you know, maybe it's the donkey job or the Joe job for the new guy on the team, but the bottom line is that if there's one thing or one practice you can replicate that you see at the absolute top level of the sport, that's not going to cost you an obscene amount of money, it's cleaning your friggin' bike. So there you go. It's a good habit that I've gotten into. Good way to inspect your machine, make sure that it's safe, because it's your butt on the line when you're going out on the track, and you know, if the bike's filthy or you haven't checked it over or looked it over in months and something fails that was preventable, well, that's your darn fault. So anyway, soapbox rant over. The other thing is that those rad overflow reservoirs, a few of them have cracked over the years, and again, a piece of plastic that's 14 years old, subjected to heat from the engine and maybe some UV, probably not, it was covered up. You know, it may last forever, it may fail. So having a reservoir fail here and drip on the ground versus a reservoir fail on there and drip all over your engine and your exhaust, I'd prefer it being out here. So anyway, I'll get one of those Motion Pro ones mounted here, maybe even remove one of the two fans just to give it some more room. I don't know, we'll have to see. But anyway, there's some nice mounting pieces right here that I could use and fabricate something to just have it sit right there underneath the fairing. So yeah, well, quite a production, but took it all off, cleaned out underneath, had to disconnect the throttle cables, which gave me an opportunity to put some, you know, nice lithium grease inside the throttle body, WD-40 in the throttle cable, nice and quick return. Removed these electrical connectors as this came up, cleaned out the inside. I bought some electrical connector cleaner and took care of that, so those are all nice and clean. Switching to the front, I took these off the 890 Duke. Luckily they're the exact same length and thread pitch, so rather than drilling out caliper mounting bolts, I had these nice titanium ones that were already drilled for me. And I think in one of my early KTM videos I suggested not to try to buy a kit for your bike, but take the time, remove the bolts you want to replace with the titanium, measure them out, and oftentimes you can find them. UK is a good source. China even, they look okay. Anyway, buying these individually as you kind of go through it, I think in the long run is cheaper than buying you know, a Pro Bolt kit for your bike that could be in the hundreds of dollars. So you see the lines are off because I decided to do a job and clean up the front and rear calipers. So for those of you of a certain age, know that these tin boxes either contain grandma's sewing kit, or if you're in at the ground floor, cookies actually come in here. So yeah, it's pretty amazing that you see these tins. Again, it's always at grandma's house, and it's usually full of sewing supplies, but originally they held cookies before they became sewing supplies. And for me, it's a nice spot to hold on to calipers. So these were in half decent shape cleaning wise, but I went through them pretty aggressively. I had run out of brake cleaner, so I just used WD-40 and an old toothbrush and cleaned things out. You can see that the pistons in there are seated back in, and I did it delicately enough, and the seals were still in good shape. And I get sort of a perverse satisfaction out of cleaning brake calipers. It's just one of those things, again, that yeah, there's some fancy tools you can purchase. I've got a very complex brake caliper slide hammer assortment, laser tools, but also this little thing. Again, you can get them on eBay for fairly inexpensively. US design, it says, but I'm sure it's made in China. These things slide in there, you press it open, pulls the calipers out, as long as they're not too seized. So that tool is kind of like for modern bikes that haven't sat in a field for 20 years. The slide hammer one I have is for when they're really sealed up, but these cleaned up okay. And yeah, the whole point of just going through it, cleaning things up. This underslung rear brake caliper that gets covered in muck over the years. So going to install some new brake pads, and cleaned up the slide pins here, and use some anti-seize compound or copper paste on there. Anyway, it's just one of those things that you can do to really improve the performance of your motorcycle, and why wouldn't you if it just takes time and some practice. So while I had them off, these single banjo bolts are kind of nice on the Ducati. You can see that they're dished, so it makes safety wiring them really easy. Again, a spring punch and a 1/16 inch drill bit in the drill press, and Bob's your uncle. One thing I learned over time too, I don't know how well you can see it. I'm holding onto a GoPro, so I have no idea what the focus is, but you can kind of see that the hole has a bit of a chamfer. So after I've drilled the hole, what I do is I follow it up with the next size larger, a couple sizes larger, so like a 5/64 drill bit, just to get rid of the sharp edges on the inside and the outside. Not that a sharp edge of a drilled hole is going to sever decent safety wire, but I don't know, it's just one of those things where it takes 5 seconds and it cleans up the look a bit and makes for a nicer installation. So once the brake pads come in, I'll put these back on, but it'll probably take a while because I'll be doing some suspension work. I'll be pulling the forks out anyway and doing some work on them. So I posted a question on Facebook that got quite a pile of responses, and all I asked was, for your average track day guy like me, or not that fast racer, there's some recommended spring and on the front and the rear settings for someone of my weight and what I think is my pace, and compared from stock to what the recommended rate is, it's less than an increment. So I think in the front, they call for firmer springs in the front. So it's like a 0.97 is the spring rate stock, and the recommended spring rate is 1.03. Go with the closest, so it would be a 1.0. So ultimately, the difference between a 0.97 and a 1.0 is your typical rider going to notice that. I didn't ask, should I do it? It's, am I going to notice that? Because I think there comes a point where it's like tires, right? I couldn't tell the difference between a Pirelli slick or a Dunlop slick or a Michelin slick. I think the average track day guy that claims he or she can is bullshit, actually, but whatever, you know, and we're talking about incremental lap times. So I got responses about, you know, do it, don't do it, ride it stock. Like the forks need to be rebuilt anyway. If I'm thinking these might be original belts, which I've got no indication to say that these covers have ever been off, then that's the original fork oil. So if nothing else, the fork oil needs to be swapped out and put in something different. It's gonna be pretty horrible and probably stink. But the idea of thinking that you know, your average track day guy is gonna go out, do a lap time on the stock springs, come back in, change nothing else but firm up the springs, suddenly, you know, they're gonna go faster, or they're gonna notice it. Who knows? But it was just sort of a curious thing, and you know, like Valentino Rossi or the top MotoGP guys are going to notice those differences, but do the average track day guys do? Who knows? Anyway, I think at this point, I'm going to keep an eye out for 1.0 springs. They might come up for a decent price in an overstock scenario. They're 170 bucks Canadian on eBay. That's the cheapest I've seen them. I'll leave it alone because I can rebuild the forks in terms of a clean and new seals if I need them, although the seals don't seem to have any problem whatsoever. The Stalker shock, I think, is sweating some oil a bit. So my fork and shock spring query again led me to some comments about ride height and custom triple clamps. So the custom triple clamps, I guess it's an offset issue, and I probably get my rake and trail. You know, if you're a suspension nerd, you can correct me, but I think it's the trail is not ideal for this bike, and so I think the trail is too high. I think it's a 36 millimeter trail. Yeah, that makes sense because rake is the angle. So 36 millimeter trail is too much. They talk about knocking it back to 30 millimeter. There's different ways of sort of offsetting that or adjusting that. And the other thing too is that what some people have said is that the bike sits too low. So you also want overall ride height front and rear. So it's a whole combination of things. And so the idea of getting some more ride height by putting the forks lower in the triple is only going to amplify the issue with the trail, and the bike won't finish the corner. So I'll keep an eye on things. And again, am I really going to notice? Am I really going to say, oh, the bike won't finish the corner, but if I knocked the trail back by 6 millimeters, suddenly the bike will handle like it's on rails? Anyway, it's one of those things where it's not something that needs to be done right away. But you know, just something that's kicking around in my head. So with that in mind, I do know that even if you leave nothing else, getting the bike up on its nose a bit more is going to help. So I did get an adjustable rear ride height, and it's interesting that this is normally like stock. It's set pretty low. So the stock one is 175 millimeters. You can see how much I've opened it up here. This is now at 180 millimeters, but I think it's one of those situations where by increasing this by 5 millimeters here is going to lead to a larger net increase in ride height towards the back end of the swing arm. At least that's my thinking. Who knows? But the other thing too is that I swear every single one of these I've ever seen or come across, and I've had them in some other parts and project builds I've had, everyone, unless you buy it brand new, is that these bloody steel threads, which are pretty significant, like that's a 12 millimeter thread, steel into an aluminum body. One's left hand, one's right hand. I can't remember which is which. You can see some of the galling on this. They're either seem to be seized into this, or they're just almost force thread in there. I know you don't want it loose, and you don't want it rattling, but it was a real bugger. WD-40, some heat, and just working on it just to get these things loose enough to extend them a bit. So I did actually get this one all the way out. There was a little bit of aluminum, stuck in the threads. So I took this one right out, cleaned it up, and again used some anti-seize compound when I threaded it back in. This one I opened it up a bit, but I were worried I was going to start snapping something, like I would bust it right off and then this would be junk. So I opened it up a bit. I've extended it there, you can see, by a couple of threads. So this is 5 millimeters taller, which is where I'll start. I don't want to screw this out any further at this point. I'm worried there wouldn't be enough thread left in the shaft body itself. So we'll start there. It was used. It was $50. Again, it might be sufficient enough to start, but this has increased the rear ride height a bit. Still waiting on some rear sets. The next week or so at the Shepherd household is going to be a bit like Christmas, in that a bunch of the parts that I ordered are all due to come in the next few days. So some rear sets that are solid mount pegs, jack it up a bit. I think I said I did get this nut loosened off finally. Took the hub out, cleaned it. Again, there was just some dirt and some dust, and brake cleaner's your friend, with a blue scouring pad. Got it cleaned up. Slid the entire hub right out, and on this side of the hub there's needle roller bearings that you can grease. So I went in there, greased those. The sealed bearings on the other side look fine. Again, if the bike only has around 10,000 kilometers, you'd expect it to be in good shape, but more grease is always better. Some more cleaning, and the sprocket should come in. The rear sprocket should come in the mail shortly. So around to this side. You can see that the rear brake caliper's off, which I've showed you. I've already also removed the rear Speedo sensor. So it was getting a 36.0 Speedo sensor error message. So I'm not going to do it right away because they're bloody expensive, but it's going to be about $200 for a rear Speedo sensor. I think that's what the problem is, although I can't see anything wrong with the original one. Like, there was no breaks or issues in the lines, but from what I've heard, they can just fail. So in my pile of bits, I had a nice new Vortex 15 tooth 520 sprocket, so I'll go a 520 conversion on the rear. Again, people are probably going to complain and comment about my gearing plan, but I'm going to go with a 1537, which is actually lower than what the final drive ratio is. I think it's 1539, but Ducatis, yes, this one revs a bit, but it's all about the torque. So 1537 I think will have me use 6th gear at my local track, and if the gearing's too long, I can switch to a 14 and not have to worry about cutting a new chain or switching out the rear sprocket. So that's my plan anyway, mainly because I had this already, and it was, I'll call it free, although I paid for it once. I've got a 520 chain with almost no use on it that I think will fit, so I'm going to call that free, although I did pay for it. So then just the rear sprocket. It's a nice aluminum. It's one piece, but it's going to be pounds lighter than the steel 525 that was on here anyway. I'll torque these up to the right setting, probably 28 Newton meters. Mark it and punch it for safety wire. Yeah, again, more just cleaning up on this side. I've already bled and refilled the clutch slave. You can see that little dongle dangling there. That's the Woodcraft side stand delete. I'm going to do some work around the battery and the wiring. I've got a starter cable upgrade kit coming in because these are notorious slow starters, and you can kind of see it there, just behind there, but they've put the regulator rectifier underneath the engine close to the exhaust pipe. So it gets nice and hot where you don't want it. So my plan is that I might actually move the reg rectifier to this side of the engine, which some people have done. And since I've gotten rid of exhaust valve motor was here, I've gotten rid of that. I can mount the regulator rectifier here, or maybe right here, so it's out of the way of the belt cover. And then inside of I bought a used set of Woodcraft frame sliders here, so it would sit right here, and so if the bike did go down on the right side, the frame slider would protect the regulator rectifier. And by getting rid of the coolant reservoir, I've got plenty of room to run some wires up here, and then just like through the V of the engine, and then into the reg rectifier there. So on one of my 848 900 SS projects that I sold to a fellow guy, that's where I put the regulator rectifier anyway. So it's just got a tuck underneath the fairing. But again, with that big exhaust valve solenoid motor right there, I think it'll fit. I might even just like put it here or something like that. Anyway, I'll figure out a spot to put it, because being underneath the bike, close to grit and grime and crap, and close to the exhaust, even with the heat shield, doesn't seem a logical place to put it. So I'll likely use the same regulator rectifier I've got on my other Ducati project. It'll work with a lithium-ion battery, and it's just better quality. You hardwire it straight to the battery, and then you extend the wires for the alternator or stator rotor flywheel on the other side. I want to just do a plug here, and I have gotten deals from Woodcraft in the past. They're the guys that I bought the kickstand delete kit off of. But here you can kind of see I've wired it up out of the way. This is the Servo Buddy, it's called, to get rid of the exhaust valve servo so it doesn't throw up an error code. So there was a mistake on the Woodcraft website where they had 2 part numbers for an 848 Ducati, and of course I had a 50% chance of getting it right, but a 50% chance of getting it wrong, and sure enough I got it wrong. So I ended up ordering the wrong part. They ship it incredibly fast via FedEx. It gets here in days. But it was the wrong one. So I phoned them up and explained to them, hey, there's an error on your website, and yeah, they saw that it was, I guess, their fault or their problem with their website, which they've repaired. But then they shipped a replacement out to me at no cost, again, very quickly, and it just didn't make any financial sense for me to ship the faulty one, or the wrong one. I guess it's not faulty, it still works, but at their expense. So now I've got an extra servo body for, I think, a Street Fighter and a few other bikes, maybe even a 959 or something like that, which should work. So I'll probably sell that and, I don't know, recoup a couple of bucks, because they're not super expensive, but at the same time, getting rid of the exhaust valve and not running these things, it's going to throw an error code at you. A couple more things, even though I haven't bolted much on the bike. There's lots to talk about. Saw a YouTube video and did some research, and the design of the airbox for these eras of bikes, 848, 1098, 1198, it has a nice little ram air scoop, but the sealing here between this and where the air cleaner goes is really poor, and the air filter also can rattle along inside. It's just a little tube thing. You can see it up there just to the right of the pop riveter there on the bench. it's not a good seal, and so there is a better design that I purchased. But I just sort of felt my hands in the airbox, and yeah, there was lots of dust in there, and they hadn't gone down into the velocity stacks yet. But you know, you don't want excess dirt inside your airbox. The whole idea is it's supposed to be clean. So some people claim that over time, if you don't address this issue, you're going to, you know, toast your engine. I don't know. Again, to me, it was a bit of preventative maintenance. They're a bit of a faff to put on, because you have to set it in there and then like line it up correctly and then get the air intake snorkels on. But I'm kind of glad I took them off and checked that, because yeah, definitely the inside of the airbox had some dust in it. So I cleaned it out as best I can blindly, and these new air filters should be better. What else can I talk about? Oh, so yeah, not only did I disconnect the flapper valve, or the exhaust valve, on this part of the exhaust collector, I was able to get it all off, and took the flapper valve right off it. So with a bit of work with a grinder and a drill and that sort of thing, I removed the flapper valve, although now the hole needs to be patched and replaced. So I've dropped that piece off with Brent at Ironcraft. And so I don't know, the guy's he's busy. He's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He's got my TT project to you know, modify the tank to work with banked carburetors and not Delortos, and then he's got this now. So it'll be a bit like Christmas, I think, when he's been able to address both of those repair jobs for me, and I can take it all home. But it'll clean it up. I think I did show in my last video that it appeared that collector had been poorly painted with some exhaust paint. I don't think it was stock paint, because I could take it off with my fingernail. So again, I don't know if I'll hit it with just some high temperature paint myself after cleaning as best I can, or think about getting it you know, Cerakoted or ceramic coated or something like that. I don't know. It's a lot of money to spend, but it would be nice to take care of that. So and the last piece, getting back to suspension, you know, again, Mr. Google and the joys of eBay. Sure enough, I did find myself a 1098S Öhlins shock for a very good price. And by very good, I don't know, I always wonder if I should tell you how much things cost. You know, is anyone here going to watch this and you know, want to buy this bike off me eventually? I don't know. It's you know, bikes and things like this are worth exactly what the buyer will spend on it. So yeah, I found a Öhlins 1098 shock from Japan for $500 Canadian shipped. That's 300 and something US. It'll probably need a rebuild, but it's an Öhlins, and it's going to be better than the stock Showa shock. So again, I'll need to figure out spring rates, but you know, to me that's a bit of a score. So I don't think I've ever said how much I bought this bike for. It was, you know, a rebuilt title, running, driving, moving 848 with around 10,000 kilometers for $2,750 Canadian. If you want to go on xe.com, you can figure out how much that's worth in your own country's currency, but $2,200 US. You know, it's one thing if the engine was toast, but by all accounts, like I heard it run, it sounds good. There's oil in it, there's coolant in it. I haven't ridden it myself because it wasn't plated, but you know, wheels are straight, calipers are good, you know, rotors aren't warped, all that stuff. So that's a pretty amazing price for a 848. So yeah, I'm happy with that. And as I go through it, yeah, whoever did work on this thing likes Loctite and over tightens everything. That's the benefit of safety wiring, I guess. You can use some anti-seize compound and safety wire things, so you don't have to over tighten stuff. But Yeah, to have a bike like this for 2750, I've made another 150 bucks US back, so 200 something back. Sold some body work that I'm not going to use. Not sure how much other stuff I can sell. I thought I could get rid of the headlights for a good price, but no one's bit on that. But the thing is I'm going to have a decent 600 class race bike for, I think I'm going to be on the track for about $4,500 Canadian. We'll see. I might even keep track. But the best thing is, again, lurking in the background is the Duke 890. Over the 2 years I've owned it, I got some Go Fast parts for that. They weren't damaged. I kept the originals, sold the Go Fast parts, and I'm not too much out of pocket over and above the 2750 and even, you know, the Oleans. Like the amount that I sold the Duke 890 wheels for. I'm you know, not huge out of pocket so far on this build, and you can see that I've got this stock rear sets on the Duke. Like I actually made money on the Power Parts rear set. I bought them used from a guy off the 13X forums, used them for 2 years, sold them for more than I paid for them. So that happens rarely when you're buying and selling bikes. I totally realize that, and bike parts, but every once in a while when you make a few bucks on a part that you bought and sold after using them, that's a win. So we are now, holy cow, and half an hour into me rambling on about this thing with not a whole lot to show just yet, but that should come shortly. So yeah, like and subscribe. Again, more people are interested in a brand new 890R and me bolting parts on it than, you know, almost a complete, you know, not complete, but a restoration and rebuild of what's going to be a track bike. It's old, I guess. It's a 2008, so it's yesterday's news. But anyway, it's going to be fun and an enjoyable build, I'm sure. So I'll stop it there. Yeah, the usual, like and subscribe. I think I'm nearly at 300 subscribers. So again, I'm not ready to retire and become a famous YouTuber like Mr. Beast yet, but yeah, tell your friends.